is only Django. Snappy a golfer star, but that's what my
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning. My name is David Corbin. I am the CEO of Tech in Asia Japan. Thank you so much for coming here today. We're very excited to do our 5th annual conference. It's hard to believe that in 2014, we started here for the first time, and it was through working with a lot of Japanese partners, we've been able to make this a successful event. Something that we're very proud of is our exhibition hall, which maybe you've already seen. From 2014 through 2017, there were 276 unique Japanese startups. Most of these startups came in with less than $1 million in funding raised. However, in the years that have passed, they have collectively raised over $370 million, and they've made over 215 corporate partnerships. That can be an installation, that can be a client. What this shows is that from 2014, the Japanese tech ecosystem has continued to grow stronger and have more variety in it, and we're very happy to be part of that journey. In fact, in 2014, these two companies were exhibitors. Bitflyer, which is now an unofficial unicorn here in Japan, and also Bukalapak, which is an e-commerce company from Indonesia. Now, when they came, they were just an exhibitor. But now, the CEO of Bukalapak, Ahmad Zaki, will be here later this afternoon to talk about how he built his company into a billion-dollar e-commerce giant in Indonesia. So we're really excited to welcome him as well. And of course, we have to say thank you to our sponsors who also make this possible. So thank you to the platinum sponsors, Fujitsu, Indeed, Mitsubishi, as well as Rakuten. Thank you to the gold sponsors, J Startup, Microsoft, Osaka Innovation Hub, PR Times, SB Cloud, and this venue sponsor, Tokyo. And of course, to our silver sponsors, Computer Futures and NTT Communications. It's not just sponsors, though. We also have community leaders who have produced different parts of this event. For instance, PTEX, which is helping us out with the ticketing, Event Hub, which is doing the networking. And then community partners, which have helped get the word out. We want to thank everyone for their support of this event. And so that's it for my initial opening, and I hope that over the next couple of days you spend a lot of time getting to know each other, learning about the new companies that are out here, and just enjoying the whole event. But I also want to move into the next keynote, which is about what Japanese VCs are doing outside of Japan. So there's an idea that Japan's very closed, and that not a lot of activity happens outside. However, we've looked at some data from the TIA database, and it suggests a very different story. It suggests that, in fact, Japanese corporates, Japanese independent VCs are very active outside of Japan. So let's just start with some very quick background. What's happening in Asia in general? So these slides show the potential of the Asia market. So let's start with smartphone users. You see this really growing quite rapidly, and now Asia Pacific is about 50% of worldwide smartphone user adoption. And then you look at something like ASEAN mobile SNS usage rates. You also see that these are some of the highest rates in the world. The world average is 37%, but you have many countries which are well above that. And then finally, in terms of internet penetration rate, again, the world average is 53%, but many Southeast Asia, as well as India, are above that rate. So this is saying that there is an online, a digital population here in Greater Asia, and then this population is driving a lot of GDP growth. In fact, if you look at, say, the middle class growth, you see this really exploding. And you see that APAC is going to account for maybe more than half of middle class economic buying power by 2030. So this is a digital first, technically savvy population that has money to spend. And this sort of opportunity is drawing a lot of attention. So we already see it happening in the startup world. We see that compared to, say, Europe, there's way more billion-dollar companies in Asia. You're looking at 100 to 24. You're looking at places like Facebook, Google, Amazon, really doubling down on their Asia operations to make sure they don't miss this opportunity. And so what's actually happening in the investment trends? So we know there's this opportunity. We know that things are going to be growing. And so you see investors taking advantage of that, and you see a really sharp rise in investment activity. So these numbers are presented in Japanese. For the English speakers, you can think of this as 67 billion, 69 billion, 93 billion, and then 71 billion USD. So we see that in 2018, we're expecting this to be another record year for investment in Greater Asia. And then if you look at startups in terms of the number of startups invested in, the individual deal number, you also see that this is holding pretty steady at around 3,500, but probably in 2018, that's going to get even higher, maybe close to 4,000. And then, who are the investors? How many investment companies are actually getting involved? For this, again, you're seeing a very sharp rise. So in 2015, maybe around 650 different VCs. This is independent VC, CVC, private equity, all those different types of investors. Maybe there were around 650 who were involved in deals in Asia. And just to be very clear, when I say Asia, I'm talking about China, India, Malaysia, all of Southeast Asia, North Asia, including Korea. I'm talking about Asia as a whole. Then if you look in 2017, that has basically tripled. And already, 2018, just halfway through the year, we're already at 1,600. So the number of investors entering this space is rising very rapidly, which means that there's more money than ever available if you want to start a company. So what's Japan doing in this sort of environment? So again, these are represented as Japanese numbers, so you can think of this as approximately 8 billion, 10 billion, 16 billion, and then 2 billion. So this is showing the amount of investment that Japan is connected to outside of Japan. So let's say there's a company that raises $10 million in Singapore, and there's a Japanese investor who participated in that deal. That 10 million goes into the Japan column. Now let's say there were 2 investors in that same deal. It's still the same 10 million. We're not double counting. So we look at it this way, and we see that, wow, Japan's actually very, very active. There's a lot of money flowing from Japan into Greater Asia. Now, yes, a lot of this, as the footnote suggests, is via just a couple huge deals. SoftBank doing deals with Ola or Didi. However, it's not just the SoftBank effect. So let's take SoftBank out of it. If you take SoftBank out of it, you still see that all these other Japanese corporates, all these other Japanese VCs are still, in 2016, it's nearly $2 billion worth of investment. In 2018, at the halfway point, it's $1.3 billion. So we see this sort of trend right now. In terms of individual deals, it's hanging steady around upper 80s, low 90s. This year, probably again in the 80s. And then again, if you take SoftBank out, SoftBank's just one company. It's very influential in terms of the amount of money they give, but the number of different deals, we see a ton of action from different Japanese corporates. And you can see the breakdown between traditional VC versus jigyosha. So where is Japan investing the most? And again, this is taking out SoftBank because SoftBank is a little bit too influential, so we want you to see more of the real numbers. So you see that in 2015, it's places like India, Taiwan, a little bit in China. In 2016, Singapore gets to the top of the list, followed by Indonesia. And then in 2017, Singapore again is holding at number 1, a little bit of action in Taiwan, as well as India again. And so now, what sort of role does Japan play as an investor? So here you can see a breakdown of the different stages of investment that Japanese companies are involved in. So you see that if you start with, say, 0 to 1.5 million, this is saying that a deal worth up to 1.5 million, how many times did a Japanese investor get involved in that? So there were 18 such deals. When you look at 1.5 to 10, there were 26 such deals. And then even 100 million plus in 2015, there were 8 deals in Greater Asia at value of more than $100 million that a Japanese company was investing in. So this actually shows, I think, a very strong balance. If you're outside of Japan and you're thinking, where do I raise money from? You can definitely think, I should go to a Japanese investor. A Japanese investor can help me in my seed round, my Series A, my Series B. They can help me in my pre-IPO round. A Japanese investor can help you at all levels of your company. And this is not just for 2015. If you look at 2016, it's a very similar number. If you look at 2017, again, a very similar number. And I bring this up because there's also the other side. Well, what's happening in China? In China, this is the number. So this is, again, the same concept. What are Chinese VCs, both corporate as well as traditional VC, what are Chinese VCs doing outside of China? So in Greater Asia, this is the activity. So you see a lot of activity in the 100 million plus range, but not so much on that seed or Series A. So yes, there is a definite opportunity for startups who are looking for that big ticket to go ask around for some Chinese VC help. But if you're looking at a more holistic image, a Japanese VC is probably your better bet. And now let's just break down this Japan versus China thing a little bit more. So this is, again, the amount of money that's kind of flowing out. And so you see that for the first 3 years, 2015, 16, 17, Japan's kind of a clear leader in this case. When you get into 2018, you see China starting to take the lead. And given this current kind of acceleration of Chinese investment activity in Greater Asia, I expect that to continue. But it bears noticing that there's still a lot of action coming from Japan. In terms of number of deals, again, the number of deals itself is much larger. So yes, Tencent, Alibaba, they are getting the headlines. But Japan VCs are active from that C to Series A to Series B to Series C range. So they're actually involved in more deals. And so you might be saying, okay, maybe this guy, he's the head of Tech in Asia Japan. He really wants to push this Japan is going global story. But is Japan actually doing a good job with this story? So yes, they do have a track record. Let's talk about unicorns. The idea of the $1 billion in value company within 10 years, public or private. This is the goal for all VCs, to invest in unicorns. So are Japanese VCs investing in unicorns? So here's a look at unicorns in India as well as Southeast Asia. It's a lot. And now let's look at the Japanese companies which are investing in them. So India is mostly SoftBank territory, but if you look at Southeast Asia, there is a wide variety. You have massive companies, you have mid-sized companies, you have traditional VC, you have all types of players across the Japanese VC market investing in these companies, investing in Gojek, Grab, Tokopedia, Sea, Traveloka, Bukalapak. So in closing, I hope you take away as a message that Japan is not just this closed-off startup economy. It's actually interconnected in China. It's interconnected in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, India. This is kind of the start of the Asia century. And it's not an issue of this one country is being to the side and not interacting. It's actually heavily invested, heavily part of the regional startup ecosystem. And I hope that this event can help push that forward a little bit. So I hope you have a really great time today. Talk to each other, meet the startups here. We have around 30 startups from overseas, another 60 startups here locally. There's lots of investors who want to meet you. And have a great time, and I'll see you around. Thank you.